in Ferguson to see exactly where they are. The protest is still going on. Some people had been tear gassed. We'll hear a little bit from a news conference early today with the pathologist hired by the family of Mr. Brown, performed a second autopsy. Now, in the second autopsy, it's about 3 or 4 hours. They do standard things. This is a scientific thing, and as one heroic figure once said, science is science, and pathology is a science. What they don't have available is the blood and the fluids, because embalming fluid has been placed in that. So the toxicology reports, Dr. Braden said that, I hope not mispronounce his name, said that they could be available in a week depending on the backlog in the department. And now this is done by St. Louis County, and he said the person in charge there was an adequate pathologist. So they don't have the x-rays to determine that, but they were done as pathologists always do. They do the x-rays, bullet entries. You'll hear when this thing goes into litigation from various experts. Was the man had defensive stance with his hands? Mr. Brown was 6'4", about 290 pounds, almost 300 pounds. So he was a fairly tall person, so he'd have to bend down. He was struck on the side of the arm, through the arm there, and he was also shot at the top of his skull. Evidently that's what killed him. So this police officer put at least 6 bullets into Mr. Brown to make certain that he was dead. Some of the others went in re-entry wounds. That's pretty common. Also there, I think one came out onto the eye and re-entered onto the eye. You'll get that in their report. But they're setting the base. This is the family attorneys there, Attorney Crump and various other attorneys. They're the one from St. Louis, and his partner that was there. They were out of Florida. So they've set some of the bases there. The ACLU had filed suit to get additional facts, and as Dr. Braden said, that basically this information should come out very quickly, and usually it does. But when you're covering up something, it takes a little longer to get the quote-unquote story straight. In St. Louis itself, the city Holocaust victim, 90 years old, was arrested there demonstrating outside of a satellite office of Jeremiah Nixon. So this thing goes on and on. No doubt there will be reports tomorrow of the gassing tonight and the use of these quote-unquote non-lethal weapons. Looking at it, I'm not sure if it went down. This is a live Twitter stream. This is a live stream, via Fox 2 out of St. Louis. They had one now. It may be shut down now. The journalists have been pushed around quite a bit, and we even have a... No, they're still there. We even had a comment from Jake Tapper. I believe it was Jake Tapper that made a comment about the treatment there in Ferguson. In Vox, Ferguson... Police in Ferguson treat journalists like this. Imagine how they treat the residents. There's no doubt about that. This heavy-handed tactics doesn't really do them any good. As far as the news reporting, there was Jake Tapper at CNN, and we'll get his comments as we move out of here. That was on Monday night, criticized the heavy-handed tactics. I want to show you this, to give you an idea of what's going on. The protesters have moved all the way down there. They're all the way down there. Nobody's threatening anybody. Nobody's doing anything. None of the stores there have seen, I could see it been looted. There's no violence. Now I want you to look at what's going on in Ferguson, in downtown America. There are armed police with not machine guns, semi-automatic rifles, batons, shields, many of them dressed in combat operation. because there's no threat going on. But they're trying to make a point, and part of the problem is this is 7, 8 nights. They have not been able to intimidate the core of the protesters. Now, will they be able to intimidate the people? They've used these acoustic devices. They've used tear gas. The answer to that is no. Now, the only step that they can do to escalate is kill several demonstrators, and then all hell will break loose. So, in other words, they have a limit. These are very young people. Wearing them down is not going to be it. They've got all these people out there. They've got their 40 caliber machine guns. Jeremiah has sent a highway patrol. The only thing that could happen next, quite literally, is that President Obama finally gets enough of this and federalizes the Missouri Guard, and they just go in there with federal troops, calm this thing down, shut this thing down. And this is part of the problem. Let me get very quickly here to the Pew. We won't have time to treat it as we normally do, but this is on the 18th, yesterday. Stark racial divisions in reaction to Ferguson police shooting. African Americans, white, have sharply different reactions to the police shooting an unarmed teenager in Ferguson, Missouri. African Americans are twice as likely as whites to say that the shooting of Mr. Brown raises important questions about the race that need to be discussed. Wide racial differences are also evident in the opinions about whether local police went too far in the aftermath of Mr. Brown's death and the confidence in the investigation there. This is a national survey of 1,000 adults. It is weighted, incidentally. And the Brown shooting raises important questions about race and whether the issue of race is getting more attention than it deserves. 44% think the case does raise important issues about race that require discussion. 40% said it's getting more attention than it deserves. And 4 to 1, 80% to 18%, African Americans say the shooting in Ferguson raises serious questions about race and merit discussion. By contrast, 44% to 37% of whites say the issue of race is getting more attention than it deserves. Well, first of all, Mr. Brown, if he were not an African American, would have not been in this situation. The city of Ferguson has a history of racial discrimination, which is systemic, and you can observe from the police department there and also from the county police department that this behavior goes on, and also from what happened tonight there. 65% of African Americans say the police have gone too far in responding to the shooting aftermath. Whites are evenly divided, 30% and 32% say that. And roughly 3/4 of African Americans have little or no confidence in the investigation, with 45% saying no confidence at all. This will continue and it will intensify. 68% of Democrats, including 62% of white Democrats, think the Brown case raises important issues. Just 21% of the Democrats, and those are probably ones in St. Louis County, masquerading as that. By a wide margin, 55 to 34, adults under 30 think the shooting of the unarmed teenager raises important questions. Those 65 and older, it's even divided, 40% to 44. And more Republicans think the police response is about right, 43%. Says it's going too far. We heard from right-wing Erickson here. Democrats by 56 to 21 said it has gone too far, no doubt about that. And we'll compare this to Trayvon Martin, which started it all, so to speak. After the Zimmerman verdict, 60% of the whites said race received more attention than it did. Fewer than 47% said the shooting of an unarmed teenager in Ferguson more attention than it deserved. Partisan reaction, majority of Republicans think that in both cases, 61% in Mr. Brown, 68% in Trayvon Martin's case, the issue of race received too much attention, but the problem is they were both African Americans. roughly 1 in 4, 27%. Very closely followed the news last week about the shooting of Mr. Brown. Several stories geared similar interests. We, of course, had Robin Williams at 27%, the Ebola virus 25%, and similar on the U.S. airstrikes 23 and 42. It's kind of interesting. These Robin Williams probably more followed it. News interest in Trayvon Martin's death in 2012, 2013 was large for several weeks. In 2012, a few weeks after Martin's death, 35% of the public followed the story, 70% of African Americans, 30% of whites. Public interest in the event was similar to interest in the Cincinnati riots, and we covered this story, incidentally. Timothy Thomas. Jerry Pippin and I both talked about Timothy Thomas. That was in Cincinnati. He was killed 24%. And there was a rebellion in Cincinnati. Interest last week about Ferguson was highest among non-Hispanic African Americans. 54% closely followed it, compared with 25% of non-Hispanic whites and 18% of Hispanics or Latinos. As is typically the case, adults 65 and older paid closer attention than younger people would. There's probably no doubt about this. 1 in 4 adults regard to Robin Williams, and we didn't cover that. Unfortunately, we would have covered it, but Jerry Pippin is still in hospital. Incidentally, he had his gallbladder removed. He's beginning to come around. It'll take a while. Jerry is 74 years old, and his colon bag has been replaced, put back on his body. But some of his classic symptoms there, nausea, throwing up, fever, etc. They had always said in terms of Jerry's condition that it involved various viruses, but they could never determine the viruses or the infections and what they call it anyway. But nonetheless, they never looked at the gallbladder. And I come from a family of doctors, most of in mental health part, psychiatrists, but still, the gallbladder is one of the things you would normally look at in a younger person. Now, he had colon cancer that was taken care of, and various other things, being diabetic, but when you have something that serious, all kinds of things, elevated temperature, and just not only that, just eating something that any food that's greasy, etc., and many other things will cause a problem. So nonetheless, they were finally able to remove that he got some strength back there. They were feeding him intravenously, and I assume they're doing that again now that he's still in ICU, and they've taken out the tubes that they had to use for the operation. So as soon as that goes away, he'll hopefully be able to talk again, and we'll be able to talk to him. As we said, this was 1,000 people. 500 were by landlines, 500 by mobile phones, including 274 with no landlines. That's becoming much more common. The Princeton data source, the Princeton survey did this particular survey. The combination of mobiles and were weighted using an interview technique that matches gender, age, etc. This is from the U.S. Census Bureau Community Survey, population density parameters from the census. Anyway, we'll talk more about this later and the techniques, but you can see where the nation stands, and this will do it for us. We're literally running out of time. We'll have the autopsy thing over on iHeart. That's a special show. You'll have to go there to get this, and the only reason for that is we've used our time slot for the 19th. Good day.